Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Pod.
Hello, Sydney. Welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party. On today's show, we return to Woodsboro for the latest entry in the Scream franchise. I'm your co-host Dallas King, and it's fair to say that for this week, I'm the Randy Meeks of the group. But with me, as always, is the Billy Loomis to my Stu Macker. It's Lee Hutchison. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this one. It's been, I was just saying it that I don't know anyone's thoughts and opinions on this movie, and I've been desperate since Friday afternoon to talk about it with people, so the moment has finally come. I'm ready for the verbal diarrhea to come out of my mouth.
And I'm sure listeners will be glad that it's not just us two toxic white men talking about it, because we have our own final girl. She knows more about horror than anyone else we know. It's our very own Kirby, and she's very much alive. It's Kim Morrison. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm very excited to talk about Scream. That's what I do with any given opportunity in my life, so a new one is an excellent addition.
I know, I was going to, start the podcast, obviously, by asking you two what your thoughts are on the franchise. However, I don't need to do that because, listeners, you can go all the way back to episode 160. Pretty much, we're at episode 301 now. So, nearly halfway back through the podcast entries to episode 160, entitled What's Your Favourite Scary Movie? And Kim, that was your very first appearance on the podcast while I was off getting incredibly burnt in India. You stepped into the podcast chair. I mean, thinking back on it, it's nearly 3 years. It'll be 3 years in March. How's it been being on the podcast?
No, it's been great, and that was a fun one. Lee was like, "What do you want to talk about?" And I was like, maybe let's just watch all the Scream films and talk about that," which he maybe regretted. But no, that was a great introduction, and I think we talked about a bunch of cool films in the middle, so it's nice to kind of bring it full circle back to Scream.
And have you rewatched the Scream films since that podcast, or did you rewatch them ahead of this one?
No, I kind of meant to, and then we've been watching all the Spider-Man films to catch up for that in the cinema, so I didn't have time, but I do plan on rewatching them because it reignited the bug. But yeah, I checked my letterbox, and that for that podcast was the last time I'd watched them, which is quite shameful because I usually watch Scream 2 about once every 6 months, so I've clearly been slipping.
And Lee, did you rewatch them ahead of this one?
Yeah, kind of. I rewatched the first and second one. I own those ones, and the joy of iTunes. Like, I'd bought Scream for like $5 a few months ago, and it's since been upgraded to 4K, so I watched a wonderful 4K edition of that, so it looks really, really good. And I ended up rewatching the second one, so I did both of them on Halloween, and then I never got around to watching 3 because it's not on any streaming service, and I'm pretty sure, it feels like when I looked at something like Letterboxd last week, that pretty much everyone that I know watched Scream 4 on Netflix. I'm surprised it probably had more people watch it last week than probably went to see it at the cinema, which feels like a wasted opportunity. They could have had all these movies on, but it seems so many people were diving into 4, and I did that. I'd only ever seen it once before when me and Kim did that episode, and I revisited, and I think there seems to be a bit of a general consensus is that time's been really good to that film, and there's a lot to like in it.
Yeah, I think, I rewatched it again as well and was actually pleasantly surprised how taken I was with it actually compared to, I think, when I first saw it 10 years ago. And it seems that, it just didn't connect at the box office because apparently Scream has done more money in its opening weekend than Scream 4 did in its entire run at the cinema. So, but time has been kind on it, unlike Scream 3, which I think people are just writing off as the worst in the franchise. And also because, it's not on a streaming service, people can't revisit it to find out if they were right or wrong. So there we go. So before we dive in, I've just got to go through, there are certain rules that we have to abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie podcast. Number 1, you can never drink or do drugs. It's a sin factor, plus it could impair your speech when recording. Number 2, know your horror movie trivia. You never know when an obscure fact about the 4th Final Destination film could save your life. And 3, finally, never, ever leave the podcast while it's recording. If a doorbell goes, if a phone rings, or you hear a strange noise, never ever say, "I'll be right back," because you won't be back. Why? Because who's to say that I'm actually recording this podcast in my own house? I could be, due to technology, I could be right behind you, or I could be up in the attic, just like when a stranger calls. You just never know. And I guess we'll find out what happens as the podcast goes on. But here we are, I guess. Actually, I guess before we get started, there is one big important question to ask, and that is, what's your favourite scary movie? Lee, putting you on the spot. As the horror movie fan among us, on the spot, what is your favourite scary movie?
Scream, the first one, yeah, probably. I will come into it, but I'm not big into horror movies. But I've probably rewatched the original Scream more than any other movie, so it probably is Scream, yeah.
And Kim?
Mine is a tie between the original Halloween and Ginger Snaps, because I can just never pick. Halloween still scares me, and Ginger Snaps I watched about 117 times when I was a teenager, so it's a total comfort watch. So it's they're perfectly tied together.
Absolutely. And I think for me, probably The Shining, but I think Scream is definitely up there. I mean, I wasn't on that last podcast, but I would say Scream was an amazing film to watch with a bunch of friends on video. And then I was old enough to go see Scream 2 in the cinema, so I did, think, opening weekend. Interesting fact about Scream 2, apparently everyone thought it was going to be such a big hit in 1997 when it was released in the States that several films moved to avoid going up against it on its opening weekend. One of those films was Titanic. So basically, for a long time, the highest grossing film of all time was Scared, not of an iceberg, but of a Scream sequel. Scream 2 was the film which, I watched, that would have been 98, just as I was finishing school. And it was a film that basically made me want to do film studies at university. But I have to say, the movies lied. It wasn't just sitting around talking about what your favorite movie sequels were. There was actually, actual analysis and essays to do and stuff like that. So, it's not like it was in the movies. Scream 3, not that great. And I'm pretty sure that's the one with the random cameo from Jay and Silent Bob because of some weird Miramax deal that they decided to put the two of them in there. Random. And then Scream 4, yes, rewatching it now, it is ahead of its time and stuff like that. So Scream 5, not Scream 5, it's just called Scream, and we'll get onto that. But Scream is directed by Radionauts Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett, from a screenplay by James Vanderbilt, Zodiac, and Guy Busick. Stars Melissa Barrera, Jack Quaid, Jenny Ortega, and returning cast members Marley Shelton, David Arquette, Courtney Cox, and Neve Campbell. 25 years on after the original series of murders in Woodsboro, a new Ghostface emerges, and Sidney Prescott must return to uncover the truth. So we will go into spoilers towards the end of the podcast when we get to the ending, but we'll try and keep it spoiler-free to begin with, I guess. And so first things first, what did everyone make of the cold open? Every Scream pretty much starts off with a phone call. Of course, I'm saying that, apart from Scream 2, which starts off in the cinema. But hey, who's splitting hairs here? And also, actually, what did everyone make of the fact that this one didn't have the Dimension Films logo in the front? That kind of threw me off. It's like seeing a Star Wars film that didn't have the 20th Century Fox logo. Threw me off for a little bit. But what did we make of this one's cold open? Which I'm going to say, when I was watching it, it just sounded like someone was reading Kim's tweets, to be honest. Because I'm pretty sure she has said, maybe even on this podcast, word for word, what the character of Tara said about the Babadook.
I actually said that to my boyfriend when we came out. I was like, I think I could put that quote on like my Mother's and Horror column because it's so perfect.
Yeah, you should sue them for plagiarism.
Yeah, I thought the cold open was really good. Yeah, I did miss the Dimension logo, sort of having it come up and a phone ringing in the background felt very familiar. So the fact that it wasn't there felt a bit odd, but I really liked it. I thought it's one of those ones where I thought they'd maybe kind of spoiled it in the trailer by like showing you who it was, but then obviously they kind of went a different way, and it wasn't really spoiling it, finding out who it was. I thought it was like, I mean, the whole film's really brutal, like a lot of the violence. I think they kind of amped it up a lot. And I know, like, the first Scream is violent, I think a lot of it kind of happens like implied off screen, like Drew Barrymore obviously getting completely like gutted. You don't really see it, but in this one, you saw like her, like poor Tara, just getting absolutely like decimated by Ghostface. It was really brutal, and I think it kind of set up how the rest of the film was going to be. Like, it wasn't really going to hold back any punches. It was just going to go for it. So, yeah, I thought it was good. And I liked the way they kind of weaved technology and things with the phone and the lock-in doors and things. They kind of always have to do that to kind of bring them up to date. But I thought they did a good job of that.
And Lee, what did you make of the cold open?
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned the Dimension side. I did find it really surreal watching a Scream movie and have the Paramount logo in front of it. It just felt like pretty bizarre, but I love the Paramount logo. I'm on the record of saying that, so I got a great thrill from seeing that. But yeah, I enjoyed the beginning of it. I think at first I was sort of like, it had very much a feeling of sort of Scream the Next Generation in a way, because I kind of was looking at this actress that played Tara, and she just felt really kind of young compared to sort of Drew Barrymore, which sort of felt like you were watching maybe like someone that was a late teen. This person felt kind of almost sort of like early teens kind of vibe to it, which felt a little bit odd. But I liked sort of the introduction of technology, where it was like, even in sort of the side effects of like, why would people pick up like the ringing phone? Like, it's just really
I did like that.
these
That
days.
did feel very much like something that, everyone with a mobile phone these days, it just says, unknown number or something. Everyone's going to be like, I'm not answering that, because it's probably just going to be, some guy wanting to sell me insurance or claims I've been in a car accident. So I did like the fact that, she did initially decline the call. I thought that was a nice move.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, I like that it surprised me that she wasn't killed off at the beginning. I think you're kind of conditioned to expect that kind of deaths to come. So, and I was immediately clear from the beginning, much like Kim said, that the violence had certainly been upped. It felt more aggressive, this Ghostface, than sort of previous ones, to a sense. Like the first one, it feels very mad and bloody, whereas in this one it feels like, a lot of anger, a lot of aggression, a lot of frustration was sort of behind a lot of the kills. So, you certainly get that impression quite early on as you sort of see the stabbing in the back. So, I was immediately sort of into the film and sort of back into that world again.
Yeah, I know. I think it's probably the leg break, which it sort of says, that they're, because Ready or Not is incredibly sort of, but in a slightly more over the top sort of sense. But then this one initially from the Cold Open it says this is going to be a much more brutal one, because I'm pretty sure that Scream 3 and 4 were 15 rated, but this one was like, when it said 18, I was like, oh, okay, well, let's see what it does. And it's like it certainly earns its 18 rating in a few places. Kim, I have to ask, one of the main targets in the opening scene was elevated horror. What were your thoughts on that? Given that you're such a fan of the term.
Yeah, I did roll my eyes at it slightly. I don't think things like the Babadook. I was saying this afterwards as well. I was like, I don't really think the Babadook's like elevated horror, because it's terrifying. I sometimes think they usually apply that to the ones where they're trying to like just make it all about the like cleverness rather than they're like, oh, it's not scary because it's elevated or whatever. So I think, yeah, they maybe included some stuff that I wouldn't have included, but yeah, I am probably would be more a fan of the stab films than I would be of the elevated stuff. So I would have got all those trivia questions right in Tara's phone call. I would have been fine.
And yeah, I did like the fact that, of course, another thing sort of updating with the technology was that she was actually using her mobile phone to Google the answers to the questions.
Yeah.
Which, of course, poor Casey Becker was unable to do back in 1996. And that's we'll come on to that bit in a bit, but I did sort of, it's the kind of thing that makes you feel old when they talk about, oh, Stab was the movie that our parents showed us when we were growing up, and it's like, really? I mean, come on, I'm just feeling really, I felt like Dewey at that point, I think it's fair to say. So yeah, it brings us on to a change in the formula, and that Tara is not actually killed. She survives and ends up in hospital, but is used as a plot device to bring her sister, Sarah Carpenter, and I'm assuming a nod to John Carpenter, back into the fold. And I guess it would be a small spoiler to talk about her relationship, and because we'll come on to that, but basically we're going to talk about how this film is a requel. They use the phrase there, a requel, which is, like they say, with the fact it's got the same name as the original film, in the same way that Halloween did as well. It's not a straight up sequel, it's not a reboot, it's somewhere in between where it's a sequel, but it's a continuing story, bringing back legacy characters, etc., etc. So, what did you guys make of this? I mean, it's all the rage at the moment. This sort of tapping into nostalgia. I mean, it doesn't lay it on as thick as something, say, like Ghostbusters, Afterlife, or a certain science fiction franchise, which we'll come on to. But what did you make of the way that they went down the route of justifying a new scary movie after so long? Because it's been 10 years since the last entry. So
I think I can justify it because I know this will sound incredibly selfish, but because I was excited for it. I think, like, it feels like the Scream franchise it's probably the only horror franchise where I've seen all of the movies and watched some of them multiple times. And I think, like, it felt justified because it felt like there was something about it where you watch so many movies like this, like the Halloween movies, for example. Like, they come out every few years, different directors, different strands. They're just like, they feel so ridiculously unnecessary that I'm not going to bother. Whereas this feels like Scream still falls under the event category. And kind of, if you look at sort of maybe 1, and I mean, I like 2, but 1, 4, and this one, it feels like it has something to say about the time, the genre, and even though at the beginning and at points that it kind of leans into talking about horror, I think it takes that sort of wider perspective about sort of fandom that's really exploded in sort of the past 10 or so years. I mean, we always had, back into the late 90s, early 2000s, oh, ruined my childhood, this was a disaster, etc. But, things have just got out of control, I suppose, with things like Twitter, for example, and Reddit forums, etc., that there was sort of like an environmental change to have a discussion about horror and how it impacts. And I think I liked that it went slightly wider than that. Maybe I'm slightly torn because I always feel like with Scream it should talk about the horror genre more than other things, whereas this, it kind of leans into a lot more and has a wider thing to say, which I think is good, but also perhaps maybe sort of strays away from what the kind of franchise maybe does best. I'm a bit torn, to be honest.
And Kim, what did you make of this requel strategy?
I think with the Scream films, the thing that they do that's obviously very unique in comparison to other slasher films, it's a different killer every time. With things like Halloween and Friday the 13th and stuff, they don't really need to dive like too much into that side of like why people are killing people, because it's always the same person or it's someone very close to them or whatever. But with Scream, it's always got to be someone different. And so I think the fact that they always have a connection to Sydney or her mum, usually, I feel like this is the first one her mum didn't really feature it as heavily as a kind of plot device. It felt, I thought it was a good way to sort of connect it back in a way that probably hadn't expected. It was a good way to sort of bring in like original characters and sort of keep it connected, but also connect it to the new characters as well and the people who are currently living in Woodsboro. I felt, I kind of agree with Lee on the stuff that they have to say about the horror genre. I think it was very clever in 1 and 2. I think 3 didn't really do it very much. It was mostly just about like the process of making a film. 4, I was kind of a bit like, all right, okay. I think there was a lot of parts in this film that I really just was like, oh god, like it was very. There was no like, I don't know if there was ever any subtlety in the Scream films, but it maybe felt like it because it was like new and fresh. Whereas I think in this one there was some lines of dialogue that I like audibly sighed at because they were just like so like knock you in the face obvious. So yeah, I like the technique of linking the characters back to the original films and things. I had no problem with that. I think that was quite well done, but I think them always trying to find something to say about the genre was maybe getting a little bit tiresome because it just felt a bit forced at this point, like they were having to come up with something to try and it was like that in the last one as well, but it just felt a bit worse in this one as well. So
Yeah, because and just I guess a small sort of spoiler here, because it's not really been mentioned anywhere in the marketing materials or whatever, but the link to the past this time. I mean, I think everyone will be glad it has nothing to do with Maureen Prescott and her rather interesting past before Sydney. But it's actually linked back to one of the original killers and how one Sam is related to one particular killer. And I mean, I think I was listening back to the original podcast you guys did, and I'd forgotten that Sydney was sort of having visions of her mum and whatever. So I mean, so I'd completely forgotten that. So when Sam starts seeing visions of her father, it was quite. I felt it was a bit of a departure for the series, which has always been, I guess, very grounded in that it's all just really most of the time a bunch of teens killing each other. So to have this sort of slightly almost, I guess, psychotic, supernatural element with her, and I mean, we can get onto the image that she sees, because I mean, she wouldn't have never have seen him like that, but I guess perhaps if he would have been styled like that in the Stab movie, so therefore maybe, but I mean, that's a whole other thing, but I guess that one's more for the fans and whatever. So what did you make of Sam's link to the past and the reappearance of, which what I thought initially was CGI, but then potentially wasn't. I wasn't entirely clear on that one. And of course, I mean that the returning of Skeet Ulrich as Billy Loomis.
I think it works. If you think, I know we've kind of danced around a bit, but it feels heavily inspired by sort of that Star Wars sequel vibe. I mean, I remember, it kind of shares that similar trope of, they didn't really advertise it as a thing of like what's his name? Oh, Adam Driver's character in the Star Wars movies. God, that shows how little impact they've left. Kylo Ren, like he is Han Solo's son, and it's kind of he's sort of just dropped in about maybe sort of 20 minutes into the film, sort of like it's not this big shocking reveal or something that happens in the third act. It's kind of like nonchalantly meant, and then you have that the same here of like, oh yeah, just to kind of let you know, I'm actually kind of, my dad was a sort of serial killer, like he was sleeping around, and I kind of liked how they just sort of dropped that in, and it sort of just makes it part of like setting the scene and so on. I could have done without sort of the visions, and in particular the final one was a bit on the ridiculous side and sends a weird kind of message, but I kind of liked the idea that it was kind of done kind of quite quick and early on, and not sort of a big twist, as it were.
And Kim, what did you make of the I guess the return of Billy Loomis?
I mean, I thought it was really exciting. There was a lot of talk on 99% of the people I follow on Twitter are horror writers and things, so there was a lot of talk of the potential of like Matthew Lillard's Stu coming back for this one, and sort of talks around, would you really have died if a TV dropped on your head? Like, you might have been fine. So it was quite exciting to see like one of them at least pop up and actually have quite a big part in it. I think I was very excited when it initially happened, and then I kind of just wanted a bit more from it. I felt like I said, like the Scream films are always kind of intertwined with like Sydney's history and Woodsboro's history and things, and I thought like Tara and Sam's mum or dad, like who Sam thought was her dad originally, was going to be more like involved in the story, and it really kind of wasn't. I wanted to know a bit more about the kind of history of that, or like, yeah, if he was cheating on Sydney, if he went with her before, if he was cheating on Sydney, why did he spend most of the first film trying to get Sydney to have sex with him? Because he clearly doesn't care. He was off getting other women pregnant. Like, it was just, I just wanted a little bit more from it. So I was very excited when it initially happened, and it was lovely to see, like you said, very classic end scene of Scream, Billy Loomis on the cinema screen again. But I just felt like it didn't do enough for me, but I'm fine with it that it happened, but I just wanted a bit more from it, I guess.
I'm going to add a point in here because it's the perfect opportunity. I was truly baffled by the mum thing. Like, it felt like it made no sense whatsoever. Like they go, oh yeah, your mom slept with Billy Loomis. Okay, like that's all accepting. But I really struggled with the bit where like, oh, she couldn't make it. She's like in London just now at a conference. And it's like, this like movie takes place over several days. And it's just kind of, you're just sort of watching the movie and like, at one point one daughter's attacked and then another daughter's attacked. And then there's continued escalation. And like, I kept expecting going, I wonder if the mum's going to come in at some point and that's maybe going to be like a surprise who the mum is, maybe something like that. And it was just kind of like, and then it got to the stage where it's like, oh, actually, it's just really bad parenting at this point. And I was truly baffled by it. And that's my main takeaway that I keep thinking about from the film of going, why did the mum stay at the conference so long?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is probably, I mean, I guess the thing that sort of breaks down like any potential argument that it was maybe like similar to the plot in the original Scream where they can't get hold of the dad, but that's because he's basically been tied up in Stu Macher's basement for a few days. But the fact is that apparently they do talk to her, although Amber says that she talked to Tara for 10 minutes. Maybe Amber was making that up. Who knows? But yeah, no, it does seem odd that I think it was maybe like thrown in to be like more of like a red herring of maybe the mum's got something to do with it. And because I was trying to think back to the original Scream, and was there any other sort of female characters around that we kind of were introduced to that we were maybe going to be thrown into to come back as a surprise cameo and to be involved and stuff like that. But we'll get onto the ending and the reveals later on. But I guess now is probably a good time to talk about Star Wars, of all things. It might seem, if you haven't seen the film yet, an odd one to talk about, but this is actually as well as a critique on horror films and stuff like that. It's basically almost like a love letter to Rian Johnson and sort of vindicating him against all the toxic fandom and stuff like that. I've seen a lot of people online talking about how this was apparently the last Jedi of the Scream series. Now, that's just complete nonsense. This film is, without a doubt, the rise of Skywalker to Stab 8's Last Jedi. Stab 8 is, in this, apparently the film which, took a wild divergence from the path of all the previous 7 films, which had all apparently featured Sidney Prescott and was wildly different, and the fans didn't like it, and then they wanted, this wasn't our Stab, you ruined our childhood, blah, blah, blah. So they get upset about this. So, but, what is funny here is that some of the critiques that people will throw about this film is how it seems highly derivative of the original one. But if that's what the fans wanted, that's what they got. Yet, they don't like something different, so therefore they get the exact same thing. And I kind of appreciate the fact that it went down such a similar path, because it was quite a critique on all these people who do not want anything different and they just want the same thing over and over again to the out potentially to ad nauseum. But you've got to kind of throw in a little twist in here and there. So, what did you guys make of the toxic fandom sort of backlash against the fictional Stab 8, the fact that it was Rian Johnson who directed it? He did get a thanks in the end credits, so I'm assuming that he was fine with it.
Did you guys see what Rian Johnson tweeted today?
Yes, the non-spoiler plot out of context, just 4 pictures of Rian Johnson smiling, and it's like because I think it's an up yours to anyone who didn't like it, because this film, to the point where Sydney at one point says, you've even chosen the same house. I mean, how derivative can you be? It's like, you've got no imagination. You just want to do the same thing over and over again. So, yeah.
I feel like I should make a point as someone that didn't like The Last Jedi but likes Rian Johnson. Like, it's just one of those things. I'll give a little shout out to myself of like, we're not all that bad. But yeah, I loved that they went after sort of that group of fandom. I mean, as I mentioned, I wasn't a fan particularly of The Last Jedi, but Christ, see when you don't like a film and you're on the side of a bunch of losers and idiots, it's just the worst feeling in the world, because you're like, oh my God, I can't make like a basic critique of this film without people potentially thinking I'm in with these losers, and you just feel so embarrassed. But I liked it. Like, it wasn't even just the fact that they went oh, we're going to kind of play off sort of this Last Jedi. They were like, oh yeah, the film directed by the guy who did Knives Out. And it's just like, they were just straight on it. I mean, I thought Stab 8 looked quite funny with like what was like Ghostface, like had like a silver face, and he had like
gold
swords
mask and a
flamethrowers.
flamethrower.
Looked quite funny. And I my only thing was like, I'd feel a bit sorry for Rian Johnson. It looked like he would create this schlock movie. I mean, I like Last Jedi has its problems, but it's not an atrocious film by any stretch. Where Stab 8 looked like really tacky stuff. But I mean, as I say, those fans that kind of, we all know the type that went after The Last Jedi and numerous other movies, they're just some of the worst people around. I mean, you think of how they bullied actresses off the screen, and you know, it's all this entitled fan stuff. I mean, you can dislike something, you can like something, but you don't have ownership over it. And, you know, being able to talk about it, what you dislike, and being open to other opinions is great. I mean, we've had it before. We've had films we've disliked, but I've never then gone and went, you know what? I'm going to tag the person into our podcast that slams their context. You know, there's just a common decency that you do here. And, you know, you might not like one director's movie, but you never know. For all you know, next is the next Knives Out could come along, or The Brick, or Looper, for example. And, you know, I just thought it was so spot on with the people that it targeted. And, you know, the language, the things they were coming out with, the entitlement was absolutely spot on. And, you know, the sad thing is there'll be a lot of people that will have seen this movie over a great weekend that will be totally lacking in self-awareness that this film is totally ripping the piss out of them.
Yeah, they will just fly completely over their head, and they will think they are vindicated, but they're the ones that the joke's on. I mean, goodness knows what would happen if Twitter was around when Halloween 3 Season of the Witch came out. And it's like, where's Michael Myers? Oh, you've ruined it. I can't believe it. You've done this. This is not fair. So, I mean, Kim, where do you stand on Star Wars and The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, and how it relates to Scream and Stab?
I mean, I've not seen any of the new Star Wars films, so I don't know. I've heard that it's terrible, apparently, but I don't know, because I've not seen it. But I feel like it's something that it happens a lot in horror films. I mean, if there's a series I love, like for example, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is getting a new Texas Chainsaw Massacre film next month, which is also called something stupid like just Texas Chainsaw or Texas, I can't remember. It's very close to the original again. And so many people are just giving it trash already. They've not even seen it. They don't even know what it's like. And they just have this like kind of automatic hatred for anything, as if it's going to take away from like how good the original film was, where like it's really not. Like there's a lot of Texas Chainsaw films I don't like, but if I'm watching the series, I would just skip them and you watch the ones you do like. That's how it works. And it's also just like the excitement for how good a new one could be, and like the potential of it. And even if it's not great, it's at least opening like more people up to this like series of films. Like there's probably loads of young horror fans that, I guess it probably doesn't happen now with the internet, but like when I was younger I saw loads of like remakes or sequels or things without realizing there was like an original film, and so maybe a terrible sequel opened me up to the original one and how good it was. So I always think like if people are willing to make sequels or remakes or reboots or whatever and kind of put their love into it, even if you don't like it, it doesn't mean you have to it doesn't mean you have to talk about it all the time. Like, I think, like, I write film reviews and stuff. I don't think I've ever written a film review that would make a director cry, and there's films that I've watched that are absolutely, like, abysmal, because I think there's always, like, something good to say about, there's always something that you can be nice about. You don't have to just get out there and, like, spew absolute hatred about stuff, and I think people just... I don't know what it is about. I mean, there's loads of films I love, like, I mean, they mentioned it in Scream, like the Black Christmas remake, the second one. The amount of hassle that one got, because everyone was like, oh, I can't believe they're making Black Christmas feminist, which just really proves that those people have never watched the original Black Christmas and read it in any kind of competent fashion, because it's like one of the most feminist kind of slashers out there. It just infuriates me.
Oh, yes, of course. They did that recently with Candyman, didn't they? The new Candyman was woke, because apparently it was, you know, a political and social commentary on how black people are treated in America. And it's like, wow, gosh, okay. I
used to write for a website, and someone wrote a massive piece about Candyman, like the original one, and someone commented on it being like, why are you making this about race? And we were all just like, sorry, what? Are you Are you kidding me? Like, I just feel like there's no reason to make people feel horrible about, one, the films that they like, and two, the films that other people have made. Like you said, like, you can, directors can take bad reviews and stuff, but the amount of stuff that they must see on Twitter of just people being absolutely terrible for no reason, and especially about, clearly, like Star Wars or whatever, like a franchise or a series that they have loved in the past, that they would bring that much like hatred in it for no reason. I just don't understand it. I'll just be like, well, I didn't like that film or whatever, but I would never, like, I don't know, I would never tag a director. I would never be that horrible. I just don't understand it. So I think it was a good comment on the way that people sort of take their perceived love for something and twist it into something nasty. I think it did that very, very well. Yeah.
And I think in the wrong hands, you could have had this Scream movie where it was like targeting sort of the whole kind of woke agenda. You know, the type of thing that you hear it so many times where it's like, oh, you know, you could have just imagined something like that. But I almost felt like immediately when you see that kind of cast, I could be wrong, but I think that's the most diverse young cast that Scream's ever had. Mm-hmm. You know, there was a full bit of representation across the board there, and it felt like it was really leaning into, like, they're kind of planting their flag of, like, this is what we stand for, this is who we are with, and like all these people, and they might often be some of our own fans, we want nothing to do with them, and we are going to kind of, you know, rub it in their faces, whether they're kind of aware of it or not, whether that comes from casting or kind of the decisions, which I'm kind of relieved about.
Yeah, because I think it was at Scream 4 that they sort of say, you know, nobody's safe, you know, unless a character's gay, and like one of them even says to Ghostface, you know, I'm gay. Well, maybe if it helps, you know, if it will save me. And so yeah, you get the broad representation here. I mean, Star Wars, it's just, I'm just going to end on the funny fact that, you know, the same people who I now see complaining about the Book of Boba Fett, and how everything is in Star Wars is basically just these Mandalorians and helmets on Tatooine. And it's like, you were probably the same people who pissed and moaned about The Last Jedi for trying to do something different. So this is what you get. You have to own it now. You didn't like it when they tried something new, and so now they're sticking to the same thing, which they're just doing over and over again. So tough luck. But in terms of kills and sort of new characters, what stood out for you, Kim? Without mentioning one particular kill.
Yeah.
Which we'll come on to in a bit.
That's fine. I'll hold it in. I mean, I like the opening, even though it wasn't really a kill. I do love an ankle injury, so her getting her ankle.
Has it made the list?
Yes, it did. There's a list on a Trello board somewhere for another article, and it got added to that because it was brutal. I really liked the whole. Sheriff Judy, I was going to call her Officer Judy there, or Deputy Judy. I really like that one because I do love a slasher like kill or chase that just happens in like broad daylight or somewhere like not particularly scary.
R.I.P. Randy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just when you really just think they're safe, it couldn't be brighter and sunnier and a place that's in amongst loads of people or residential. So I thought that one was really good and shocking. And I'm trying to think. I just thought a lot of the injuries and stuff in general were just, yeah, like I said, like really like a lot more brutal. You just kind of got to see a lot more of the camera never panned away, because even like Randy, when he dies in Scream 2, you don't really see a lot of it. You kind of see the aftermath. I felt like in this one we sort of saw everything. And
it's one particular neck injury.
Yeah, and they never looked like fake or like anything. They always looked really real and brutal, which I thought was good.
And character-wise, who were your favourites of the new cast?
I really liked Mindy. I'm just a sucker for the horror geek character, and I liked that it was a girl again, like Kirby. Again, I thought a lot of the stuff that she said when she got her big like rules monologue was really good. And I'm trying to think. I really liked the main kind of sisters, like Sam and Tara as well. I thought they were really good, and it was kind of, I felt like this was maybe the first kind of time, like obviously Sydney's in it, but it definitely felt like the kind of final girl thing was on Sam instead of instead of Sydney, she just kind of felt like she was interweaved in the story, but it definitely felt like it was more about them. So I thought that was quite nice, because even though it was lovely to see all the kind of original characters again, it was nice to kind of pass the torch, and you kind of get the feeling that if they did do any more films, you wouldn't need to include like legacy characters in the same kind of way, because it feels like it could kind of go off to other people.
Lee, what were your favourite kills and characters?
I think I'll have to sit on my favourite kill for just now, but I really like this new cast, and I think I spent probably almost the entirety of the movie going, oh, I recognise that person, but where from? And, I think I had quite a bit of fun afterwards diving into people's IMDb, and just the amount of time we went, oh, of course it's that person from that. And I think there's maybe I'm giving it too much credit here, but I think there's almost something interesting going on with the casting of some of these kind of new characters. I mean, you have Mason Gooding, who played Chad. I'd recognised him eventually from Booksmart. He's Cuba Gooding Jr.'s son. Then you have Jack Quaid, who is kind of the son of Randy Quaid and Meg Ryan, and I love him in Star Trek Lower Decks. And you have a couple of these sorts of like actors kind of dropped in where it feels almost like this tie-in of going back to the originals, kind of new generations of people. And I kind of wondered maybe if there was some sort of clever casting involved in that, of kind of like, oh, we should kind of go after kind of that person as well. And I really loved kind of Richie. I've always just found Jack Quaid's energy really infectious, and I liked him. He was probably my favorite of the new characters, and I've enjoyed it the past couple of months in the sort of lead up to this film. I don't know if any of you's followed Jack Quaid on Instagram, but I almost get the impression he's almost like if Kim had got cast or got to write a new Scream movie. Like, he's just literally so excited all the time about being involved in Scream and chatting about it. And I just find that sort of enthusiasm quite infectious, where you watch a lot of these sorts of franchise movies and it's kind of like you sign up, you do the movie, you do the gig, there's not much enthusiasm behind some of the decisions. But like with him and a bunch of this new cast, I felt really excited. And, I'm the same as Kim. I loved Mindy. The actress is in a TV series I'm only finally really getting up and going with just now, Yellow Jackets. And I thought she was great in it. She was just a character I was like, I would have loved to have been friends with her in that kind of world, and I just loved sort of her connection to the kind of past. So yeah, I really liked it. I wasn't kind of necessarily blown away with sort of Tara and Samantha, but I just thought a lot of the kind of supporting cast were great. And a big shout out to Dewey as well, who I thought was fantastic in this too.
Yeah, I think Jack Quaid, for me, I thought he looked like he resembled, like if someone had taken like Pacey and like basically every sort of leading man from like those sort of series in the late 90s and sort of put them into like a face blender. It's like he just exuded that sort of energy. So I totally understand why he was put into it. And kill wise, I did like the sort of almost sort of cat and mouse in the hospital, with the fact that at one point Tara is once again being chased, but she's like in a wheelchair and can't really even operate the wheelchair, and she's just slowly sort of squeaking along the floor, and it's just like, something bad's going to happen here. But I'm afraid we're gonna enter the spoiler territory. So if you have not seen the new Scream movie yet, pause and just say, "I'll be right back." And now you're back. Great. So we're going to get into it. So there was one, obviously, kill scene that we wanted to talk about, and it's fair to say that the film ticked off basically my one requisite that I wanted it to do, and that was to kill off one of the three main characters, which I've kind of been hoping for since Scream 3, and I mean, even the killers at the end sort of say it does seem kind of ridiculous that Sidney Prescott would survive 7 stab movies. So, but it isn't Sidney. It's poor old Deputy Dewey. He's basically taking the Harrison Ford role in Passing the Torch, and basically he's the gruff person who helps the kids initially, but then ends up getting killed. And quite brutally, as he said, he's been stabbed 9 times already. However, he wasn't able to survive 2 different knife wounds at the same time. And at one point, it did look like they were trying to gut him as well. I think he could have survived, but he does make the mistake of going back for a headshot. When that's the thing. Whenever anyone knocks out Ghostface, they always remember far too late. It's like, oh yeah, I probably should have unmasked him to try and figure out who it was. But yeah, no, they didn't. So what did we make of the end, the noble sacrifice of Deputy Dewey?
It was always coming, wasn't it? As you say, I think you kind of got the impression that when you sort of thought, right, someone's got to get it at this point, and I think it felt quite obvious early on, especially when they sort of started leaning into Star Wars quite a lot, of kind of like, oh yeah, he's kind of the grizzled Han Solo, we saw them, they were sort of living happily ever after, he was a success, oh, good for him, and then it's like, oh, he's just turned into a pathetic kind of loser, and you kind of very much felt like he was going to get his redemption, and sort of they were leaning him into sort of the three returning I suppose the three returning characters that have been across the whole franchise, the fact that he was getting a lot of the attention in the movie in the early beginning stage, you're like, yeah, it's kind of getting set up for him to go. And he got a good bloody death. I mean, it was violent, it was aggressive, and I just loved the little touch of when, Ghostface finished him off. It was like, oh, it was an honor. And as you say, you think of how many times he's been stabbed or come close or foil plans. He went out in a real blaze of glory, which I liked. And as soon as the elevator door closed and he had the wink of like, gotta shoot him in the head, you were like, and he's dead.
I think I went into this film the same as you, Dallas. I was like, somebody's got to die, and it'll be Gale or Dewey, and I'm not really bothered. And then the minute we started hanging out with Dewey, I was like, oh, I regret everything. I hate myself. And I think I've shouted out loud 3 times in the cinema in my life. One was in Sinister when the guy jumps at the attic hatch, and I swore
the attic
very
hatch,
loudly.
not lawn work.
No, that was fine. I can't remember if that because before or after the attic hatch, but maybe I was really tense by that point. The second time was in the remake of Halloween, the Rob Zombie one. I shouted because I was so angry. And then this one, when Dewey said, I'm going to go back and shoot them in the head, I went, no! I was just like, no, you can't. To be fair, right, his death was beautiful. It was so good. It was so gory. Like you said, it was an honor line was just perfect. That line's in the trailer, but you don't have the context for it. It was beautiful. If they're gonna kill one of the characters off, it was a better death, I think, than Randy just getting pulled into the van. It felt brilliant, but it was properly heartbreaking because it was just like you said, we spent the most kind of time with him. He's always the one that's kind of, he's been a policeman through most of them. He's kind of always putting his life on the line to save people. He's already lost his sister to the killer in the first one. It just felt, it was a proper gut punch, which I think is quite impressive that a 5th film in a series can still make you feel that emotional about characters dying. Though, yeah, you feel like as someone who had been a policeman, he wouldn't have got semi-distracted for a moment by his phone ringing enough. You just walked up and immediately shot them in the face. There would have been no hesitation. You would have just done it. But it was, if they were going to do it, I think that was the best way to do it. It was a great death scene out of all of them. It was a very memorable one. But man, yeah, I hate every single time in the last 10 years I've said that they should have killed him in Scream 4.
Yeah, no, I mean, like the killers say at the end, it was, it served a purpose, it proved that, this film has stakes and anyone could potentially go. As Randy famously said in the first one, everybody's a suspect. I mean, did you guys have it figured out straight away? Were you wrong-footed at any point? There's a few red herrings. It purposely tries to put you one way and then pull you back another way. I mean, actually saying that, I'm going to ask a different question. Who did you think the killer was going to be before you went to see the film? I'm going to say that I actually thought it was going to be Dewey or Gale because the poster said, the poster had 2 posters. It was a very good marketing campaign. One said, the killer is on this poster, and which I have looked back, it is true, the killer was on the poster. And the other one was, it's always someone you know, and I always thought that was referring to the audience in that it's always someone we know, because we don't know the new characters, who we're going to know. So I thought it was going to be one of the original legacy characters, but I was wrong. Who did you have pegged before you went into the film? Because you probably had a guess.
I thought it was going to be Stu. I thought he was going to survive this TV thing. That was like the only theory going around that I was like, yes,
What,
this
come
makes
back
sense.
bandaged
Yes.
and sort of...
Yeah, because Matthew Lillard is in Scream 2 in the background, and I think he's maybe in Scream 3 as well in the background. So there's this theory going around that he survived and he's been like stalking Sydney this whole time. It just made so much sense, and I was so excited for it. I was like, "Yes, I am so on board
back
with
to his
this."
house?
Yes, exactly. It was going to be someone connected to him that was going to lure them back to the house, and it was going to be like a big showdown. And he was going to come down the stairs in his red dressing gown thing again. And it was going to be brilliant. I didn't really have a guess at like the new characters, but I kind of hoped it was going to be something like old school and historical, like it being Stu was the smartest.
Stuck in the past.
Yeah, I know.
Lee, who did you think it was going to be going into the movie?
So I've got two answers here, and one I think you'll probably just mock me for. But so I'll give you my serious one. I think it was pretty obvious early on who the two killers were.
I'm talking about who you thought it was before you watched the movie.
So I never thought it was going to be any of the sort of legacy characters, because I was just trying to rattle my brain, like when I rewatched them, of like, it just doesn't make any logical sense that it's kind of going to be sort of any of the legacy characters. It just doesn't work, and it doesn't feel true to the kind of characters. So I love the tagline. I think the tagline has probably added an extra couple of million onto that film, of people being like, oh, I'll give this a shot. It could be Courtney Cox or Neve Campbell or David Arquette. But
these movies work best when they're meta slasher whodunits.
Yeah, well, so. I kind of, it slightly doesn't answer your question, but I think there was a point in the film where I thought, you know what, they're so leaning into kind of the internet culture, and how I was thinking before the film of like, oh, it could be this character, or I think it'll probably be that person for X reason, or things at the start. I thought, do you know what, I think this film's actually going to be really clever and go, joke's on you, because we're not going to reveal the killer in this movie, that it was going to become some sort of thing to kind of play with the audience's expectations. And it was like the tagline and this hype that they were almost playing into, like, you're going to know the killer, that you would never get to see, and you would just be left at the end going, who was the killer? And you would have this internet kind of outrage, and I thought the film was going to play into that. So I had a good 30-minute spell where I thought that was going to be the case, and obviously it wasn't.
I mean, they could have done with a Clue ending, which when it was released in the cinema in the 80s, it was obviously on a 35mm print, and they actually had different endings. So they could have filmed multiple endings and had multiple different cinemas screening, and then everyone would come out saying, oh, I can't believe this person was the killer. And then someone would be like, no, it wasn't. It was this person. They'd been like, what? You never know. That could have been it. But we got to the, so just before the reveal, just before we enter Act 3, Lee, who was your money on?
That it was on both sort of Amber and Richie.
Okay, Kim, who was your money on?
I really stopped caring a lot before the end, actually, because I realised it wasn't going to be like anything significant, or it wasn't going to be like their mum or somebody else, and I was just like, I'm not really that bothered. I knew it wasn't like Mindy and Chad. I thought it might have been the girlfriend with the pink hair. I can't remember her name, but I think Amber kind of just gave off like crazy girl vibes. I don't know. I honestly, by the end, I was a bit just like, I'm not really bothered.
I think going into the final house, I think they did a good enough job to wrong foot me about Richie. I thought it was going to be Amber and Tara. I thought it's too convenient, that she was attacked in the first scene and somehow survived, and then attacked in the hospital and survived, and then her missing inhaler. It's like I think she's in on it. Obviously, she couldn't have killed anyone, but I think she was in on it to get back at her sister. But then, of course, I turned out to be wrong. It was, in fact, Amber and Richie, as, Dewey said it himself, around about 15-20 minute mark, always look at the love interest, which seems a bit odd because that's actually really only been the first film that was the love interest. So, Dewey, you should really watch these movies more before you make things. But yeah, he had it pegged, and it turned out that Richie and Amber were fans upset at the treatment of the Stab franchise with Stab 8, so wanted to go back to the original, create new source material, and set the franchise back on the correct path that it should have been. what did you really think of their reasoning? I mean, it made perfect sense given the way that the film was exploring toxic fandom culture. And as Richie himself said, how can fandom be toxic? We all love this stuff. And it's like, well, again, the joke's on them because
I liked it. As I say, it made sense, and I kind of felt Richie was sort of playing a lot of a long game. He was totally overcompensating. Like, I've never heard of the stab movies. Oh, what are you doing? And he was always there, like in and around. It was, and as the kind of the kill count was going up, I was like, well, it's kind of not leaving too many kind of characters. I was like, it just felt so obvious that he was like. And I think at the fact that he looked like Stu from sort of the first Scream as well. Like, he just had that sort of like scruffy kind of look to him where I was like, you know, there was just something about it was like felt obvious. And sort of with Amber as well, I kind of thought back to the first Scream with like the mobile phone. And it was just like, it was a cloned mobile phone. And then in the first one, you know, the mobile phone, like it falls out, you know, that being a whole thing. So I kind of just felt like as the death toll was going up, it just felt like it was zeroing in on them. With Amber, it felt like a bit of a kind of, yeah, it was kind of maybe angling towards that making sense, but I didn't quite buy her sort of character kind of coming a little bit out of nowhere. And I don't know, I thought she looked a bit small to be sort of Ghostface. I mean...
I did wonder that, yeah, it's like, yeah, she must have been wearing platforms or boots or something.
Yeah, she did not look very tall, and... I mean, on a meta level as well. I mean, she basically got the same sort of third act kind of experience and death as in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And that was the moment I clicked when I was like, I did the sort of Leonardo DiCaprio style gif. I was like, that's where I recognize her from. Even like the final shot, I was like, she gets like torched in that movie and then shot. And I was like, that's where I recognize her from. And I was like, there's no way that isn't done on purpose as well.
Kim, what did you make of the logic behind the killer's motive?
I mean, it was all right. I think you can tell that I started off really hot on this film, and by the end I was like, nah. I think with the Scream films, there's always a sort of they talk about films and the rules of films and what's happened and stuff, but there's always sort of a deeper reason for why people are doing the murders. They're always trying to get famous or something like that, or get their own movie deal or whatever. And I think this one just felt a bit, I guess it just felt as pointless as the people who rant about not liking films on Twitter and think that anyone cares. Really, it felt just a bit hollow, which was a bit, yeah. And I think I just felt like I wanted a bit more from the ending. I think the whole, like, it's always someone you know, I thought it was going to be someone significant that maybe we'd known for a while or whatever. It kind of just felt like we were just getting to know these characters, and then it just kind of got this kind of dropped on you, especially Richie, because he wasn't even, like, at least Amber lived in Woodsboro and had like the history and stuff. He just kind of interjected himself in. It just felt a bit weird. So yeah, I kind of, the toxic fandom stuff was fine, but I think it was sort of missing that sort of other added deeper element, or like the kind of, even the other characters were kind of going for revenge on a deeper level. You think if they'd been trying to get the proper revenge, they would have went after like the filmmakers or whatever, like rather than just the people who were involved and obviously have no control over the story.
Scream 6 opens with Ryan Johnson in his Hollywood mansion.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a phone call.
I feel like that would have made a little more sense for the point they were going for. So it felt fine. I have seen far worse motives for killers in horror films, but it just felt a little, it felt a little flatter than a lot of the other ones I've done. I think I'm so used to them being completely muddled up in Sydney and her mum's like timeline of life that this one just felt a bit like, all right, okay. Yeah. And
what did you make of Sam's dispatching of Richie with help from Daddy?
You know what?
Because it was quite extreme.
I was kind of fine with it. It felt like like she's been fighting with this thing or we don't know, quite a long time of her life. Obviously, she was taking pills and things to kind of help it, and it felt like a kind of like, let's use this. At least for kind of good just now, I guess. You don't know where that's going to go if they make another film, if it's something that's going to come back. But I cannot forgive the line, whatever it was she said, where she was like, "Oh, you don't know the rules. Don't mess with the daughter of a serial killer." I was like, that's not a like witty saying, or is that really what you want someone's that's your final saying to them before you kill them? Like there's so many good ones in Scream, like not in my movie, or you forgot something about Billy, I killed him. Like there's so many good ones, and that was what she went with. I think that was another like audible sigh in the cinema. I was like, all right, you could just said nothing. You could have just killed him.
because it's like the the never F with the original. That's a good one, but
Yeah.
it did feel like her that line, and then the like here's your ending. It's like it's like no, they've it's clear that she was not really a horror fan, because she didn't come up with or even a good she never watched Arnie movies, because she couldn't come up with a good one liner for dispatching the people. But I guess what do we think is next for the franchise? Because a 35 odd million to 50 million 4-day weekend suggests there's unlike many of the characters, there's a lot of life left in the franchise, and this film has righted a potential wrong. It was never 100% confirmed, and also just one stab wound to the stomach is maybe not enough to kill. But fans were delighted that if you spotted when Richie is watching the YouTube video review of Stab 8 and how much it sucks on the right, there's another little thing for an upcoming video that has interview with Woodsboro survivor Kirby. And Hayden Panettiere was thanked in the credits as potential maybe for a deleted scene somewhere where she's being interviewed about it. So Kirby is out there. Are we going to see her return for Scream 6 and something that maybe moves away from Woodsboro and Ghostface? It goes in a completely different direction. The fans might not be happy, but it could happen. What do we want to see from the future of the franchise?
I think I kind of hope there was a line that I got a little bit excited about, like, if they have the restraint, they'll go for it. Whereas, like, they went, like, every 10 years someone puts on a ghost face and comes back. I was like, ooh, that would keep it exciting, of, like, every decade there's some sort of Scream movie, and I was kind of hopeful for something like that. I mean, I think it's telling that perhaps, like, usually when you get a big kind of blockbuster weekend like this, I think similar happened with Scream 2. Like, they've not announced on Sunday, like, and that means we've sort of triggered Scream 6 is kind of coming. And I think one thing that's a bit weird about kind of thinking ahead to the future, I don't think we'll sort of see kind of Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox in the next ones, because it was just felt like that was a connective tissue to the past, and I think it's almost handed over to this new generation, but that new generation is all but kind of gone already. And I do find it odd when we think about what we would have spoken about a lot going into this movie. We've not really spoken about, like, kind of Gail and Sydney, because they feel like oddly passive characters in this. Like, it almost feels like they're the audience going, oh, we've kind of seen this happen before, don't worry about it, or oh, we're off into this house, oh, here we go again. They kind of feel quite nonchalant about everything, which is either really clever or slightly bad writing. I'm not too sure.
I think I would watch the Scream 6. Like I said, I'm excited about Texas Chainsaw Massacre 74 or whatever it is that's coming out. Like, I would watch anything. I think it definitely felt like that they could continue some sort of story now without Sydney and Gail, and it would feel fine. It definitely felt like a kind of closing chapter for their characters. Dewey was the only one who was left in Woodsboro, and he's dead now. They don't even have that connection. If he's not there, would they even... Like, if someone did come back, would they even know about it? Like, they came back because Dewey phoned them, and then they went and tried to hunt down the killer to get revenge for him. Sort of without that connection, I think it would be fine to kind of carry the story on without them. They don't need to keep bringing them back. They don't need to do a Halloween resurrection and, bring Neve Campbell back for like the first 5 minutes of a film and kill her off. You can just leave characters to get on with their life. And I think the thing with the Scream films as well is because it's the same characters all the time getting attacked by different killers, it's just it's really hard to imagine the amount of trauma like the three main characters must have gone through in their lives. Like, they've not had peace for the last like 25 years because people keep deciding to make things about them. And I think this was the first time that the story, it was connected to Billy and to Stu's house and to Woodsboro, but it wasn't really, like I said, about Sydney or her mum, whereas every other film was. So I think they could keep that going, and it wouldn't have to be about them. It could be connected to, you know, other points in the films or the history or the town or whatever, and it wouldn't have to include them, and it could keep going as a slasher series and be quite interesting. So yeah, I would be excited if they announced another one. I'd be excited to see what they did with it, and I think it'd be quite fine to kind of leave Sydney and Gail out of it and just let them kind of get on with their life. They wouldn't really have a reason to come back to town if Dewey wasn't there. I will say as well, though, that in that YouTube clip, which I didn't catch in the cinema, but I caught later because someone drew it to my attention, the bottom video at that side panel says, "Did the real life Stu Macher survive?" So you never know, they might it might
You're
still
trying
happen.
to manifest this
Yes,
so badly,
I
Kim.
am. I'll just, yeah, I think it'd be hilarious. I would love it. You know, slasher films have done far weirder things in the past to get characters back to life, and I think it'd be interesting to see Scream do it without like retconning anything, just to like come up with a kind of a sensible explanation for it rather than trying to just like rewrite bits of history or things. But yeah, I definitely think they should make Scream 6. If they want to wait another 10 years or whatever to do it, I'd be quite happy. But I think it's definitely one of the... I saw everyone kind of posting their Scream rankings over the weekend now that everyone had seen it. And even though I didn't like this one as much as 1 and 2, I think it kind of ranks quite equally with 4 for me, which doesn't mean it's a bad film at all. I think it's amazing that you can get a series that has 5 films in it, and especially in horror, and none of them be like actually like unwatchable. Like, I don't like Scream 3 as much as the rest of them, but I have seen it more times than I've seen like at proper like Oscar winning films or anything. Like, I had it on VHS as a teenager, I watched it all the time, and I don't like it as much as 1 and 2, but I don't think it's a bad film, and I think it's impressive that they've done that with a series of 5 films deep, and they're still all a lot of fun, and I would watch them all. I wouldn't skip any in the rewatch. I'd just maybe watch 1 and 2 a little bit more frequently.
Maybe Scream 3 is due a re-evaluation, given its plot centres around a woman who was sexually abused in Hollywood. It was ahead of its time, perhaps. I don't know. But I guess, yeah, ranking-wise, Kim, I think you kind of hinted there. Are you a 2, 1, 4, 5, 3?
Yeah, it's hard. It's kind of 1 and 2 are equal because I'm aware that 1 is like a perfect film, but I watched 2 so much as a teenager that it just, I feel like I prefer it because I've seen it more. So they're kind of equal, and then 4 and 5 are equal, and 3's kind of a couple of steps down on its own, but still a lot better than a lot of other sequels that I've seen.
Yeah. Lee, what would your ranking be?
1, 2, 3, probably very close with 5. 4 very close with 5, and then kind of all the way down at the bottom 3. But as I say, I the fact that I'm excited about horror franchises is testament to Scream. And Kim nailed it earlier on. I think what stands it apart and makes it always kind of fun to watch and revisit is it's like a whodunit. And that keeps you kind of guessing the whole time, and you get that rewatch value with all of them, even kind of 3 and 4 of like, oh, there was a sign there was a clue there was something there, and it keeps you guessing in a way, as opposed to like, oh, here comes Michael Myers to kill all the kids again. With this, it's like, which one of the kids is the killer? And I like that, and it makes me feel excited to go see it opening weekend, and it makes it an event as opposed to just watching the kind of same old every time. That it may be a bunch of kills, but there's always something a little bit fun kind of thrown in to keep you guessing.
Yeah, I think for me it's going to be 1 and then 2 and 5. I'm actually really keen on 5 just because of the irony that these kids were so mad at the franchise going off script that they then want to do the other one, and then it's basically just a retread of the original. It's just, I like the meta jokes on that. And then 4 and then 3, because I rewatched Scream ahead of this, and I'd forgotten just how good Matthew Lillard's performance is in it. I think it's like at the end when he's like, oh, my mom's going to be so mad at me. And then I think one of my favourite lines, which is just a throwaway line, improvised in the moment, was just like when when Billy throws the phone, he's like, fucking hit me with a phone. it's just like, oh, it craps me up every time I see that one. It's just a great performance. So yeah, Scream will always be at the top. So there you have it. Scream is back. Probably back sooner than we expect. It probably won't be another 10 years before the next one, given how Hollywood is and how they are desperate for hits at the moment. So we'll probably see the return of Ghostface. Whether he'll be back with a gold mask and an upgrade of a flamethrower and such, we'll have to see. I'm hoping for that Ryan Johnson is announced as the director of Scream 6 very, very soon. We shall see. But I guess that wraps it up. And this leaves me to say one final thing. We'll be back. Oh, shouldn't have said it.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.